Yesterday, you told reporters off the Senate
Congressmen
floor,
from both sides
Senator
of the aisle.
Both Republicans and Democrats.
This was a bipartisan effort.
This is not a party issue.
Hello, welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Leigh Caldwell, an anchor here at Washington Post Live, and also co-author of the Early 202 newsletter here at the Washington Post. Today, we have the latest installment of Across the Aisle. It's a show where we highlight what is actually getting done in Congress, where Republicans and Democrats come together to accomplish big and sometimes little things. And today, joining us in a very special episode, we have two senators, Republican of West Virginia, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York. Senators, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
So the reason why I think, of course, this is such a special episode of Across the Aisle is because today is the 14th annual Congressional Women's Softball Game, and that is why you two are wearing softball jerseys. It is where women members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, play on the same team against members of the press, including myself. I will see you on the field in a couple hours. Senator Gillibrand, I want to start with you. This game has been going on for 14 years. It is actually a fundraiser for the Young Survivors Coalition for young women who have cancer. Can you talk a little bit about why you got involved in this game when you were approached about it and why you ultimately decided to join?
Well, I got involved from the beginning because my good friend in the House, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, had breast cancer as a young woman. She was 39 years old and she survived and did not tell anybody during the crisis. But when she recovered, she came to me and said, "Will you play this game with me and raise awareness for young women who have breast cancer?" And I said, absolutely. I don't know how to play softball, but I'm happy to learn. And sure enough, several of us learned the game and started playing and have spent over a decade really trying to lift up this issue to protect young women so that they know what breast health is, how to make sure they are protecting themselves from cancer, and what to do if something's different than it was.
So from not knowing how to play softball, Senator Gillibrand, to the star pitcher of the Congress team, you've come quite a long way.
Definitely have learned a lot.
Senator Capito, when you were first approached about this, were you skeptical at all? Or was this something, what were your intentions? Was it breast cancer? Was it getting to know other members of Congress? Why did you join?
Well, I was actually approached by our good friend Joanne Emerson, who was the Republican at that point in the House. I was in the House. That Debbie Wasserman Schultz had first approached to see if we could get a bipartisan women's team together. And I love Joanne, and her daughter Tori is our coach to this day, has coached us all 14 times. But I think that a couple of the reasons, breast health and breast cancer hits pretty close to home. My husband's mother died very young of breast cancer, as her sister did as well. So that has always been important to me. But also the camaraderie of getting to know other members in a different kind of an atmosphere, to play with members across the aisle, had a lot of appeal to me as well. I think so much of the time that we have are spent in our committees or spent talking to our fellow, party members, that we don't really get out as much in a more social atmosphere that I think we should. And the other reason that really this drew me, I hadn't played softball, but I pretty much played everything else. And I just love sports. And I think it creates such a good atmosphere for building friendships, building relationships. And I'm very competitive, so I like to win. So we're hoping for that tonight.
I'm not so sure about that, but we'll see.
Okay.
Maybe this year.
Senator Gillibrand, there's a men's congressional baseball game as well. But in that game, Republicans and Democrats play against each other. And this game, Republicans and Democrats play on the same team. Was that by design?
Yes, the women of the House resolved pretty quickly that we wanted it to be bipartisan, that we wanted to have a place where we could get to know each other as women and as friends and as teammates first. We also wanted it bicameral, so we made sure that we had the Senate and to get them involved right away. And it's the only thing like that in all of Congress. We didn't want to fight against each other. We wanted to fight against a shared enemy, the Capitol Hill press corps, but not truly enemies, more colleagues. And so we really have enjoyed it, and we've enjoyed getting to know you guys. The press team is fantastic. They are full of talent and enormous intelligence and have a lot of gifts. And so we love getting to know the women on the press team as well, as women who work in the same workspace as us every day with all the challenges that we face that are very similar in both industries.
Senator Capito, and sticking with the Republican and Democrats playing on the same team, is that idea, is that what makes women different than men, in the sense of from the men's baseball game, where as women thought of this as an idea to build camaraderie, to build relationships, and how has this translated?
Well, I think we obviously during this conceptions of how we were going to do this, I think that having us be on the same team was always the original idea. I don't think we ever thought that we could duplicate the baseball game, but also I think that we sponsor each other's bills. We travel together. We have social interactions together around family or family situations that we're all fighting at the same, or trying to deal with at the same time. So we do have a natural camaraderie, I think, and I think the guys have it too, but they're more competitive with one another than I think I envision us as a group. And so I think it was a genius idea to get us together and to feature us as not just women who like to play sports and who are joined together for a unified cause, but also for being able to kind of row our own boat here together to demonstrate to people, to young girls, that maybe you don't agree with people on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but when you lay down your arms and you get together on a Wednesday night to play softball on the same team, you're right there cheering for one another. And I think it's a refreshing and it's a kind of an exuberant sort of feeling when we all get on the field together.
Well, Senator Gillibrand, talk about that a little bit. What happens when there's a nasty political debate that's happening on Capitol Hill, on the Senate floor, on the House floor, in a campaign, and it happens on a Tuesday, and then you guys have practice Wednesday morning? Do those conversations come up? Do you guys talk about that on the softball field at practice?
Definitely not. I think I avoid all political issues on the softball field. What I try to talk about is common ground. So I find, certainly with Shelley, we've worked on water quality issues, PFAS. Both upstate New York and West Virginia have the same military bases and traditional historic manufacturing facilities that created PFAS in our water and harming the health of our constituents. We've worked on maternal mortality issues. We've worked on mental health issues. We've worked on substance use disorders. We really have so much in common in terms of helping our constituents that we actually don't need to talk about our differences. We have plenty of things to talk about that we have in common, and I try to focus my conversations with my colleagues on ways we can help one another. I don't run campaigns against other members of the softball team. I avoid those. And so, because these are women that I trust and I really appreciate, and I just try to leave politics definitely outside of the ball field.
Senator Capito, do you have the same kind of internal policy that you don't want to defeat another woman on the softball team?
Well, I can tell you this from our practices early in the morning. It's pretty much understood that these are not the places to have policy differences and discussions. I mean, I think we're all happy to have that safe space because we're going to spend all the next day and all the intervening hours doing those kinds of debates, whether they're partisan or not. There have been a few occasions where maybe as we're warming up, we're tossing the ball back and forth, that you can hear a conversation next to you that's starting to edge onto the out of the safe space, maybe a more political. It's usually leading up to an election. You just have to say, okay, time out. We're hitting into the wrong zone here. Let's redirect the conversations, because the last thing we want is to hurt somebody else's feelings, to say something that's offensive, because we work hard for these jobs. It can be very emotional. It can be very negative sometimes. The last thing we need is to go out into as I said, a safe space, to have conversations and overhear conversations that could be hurtful. And so those cease right away. And it's happened, very, very rarely, as Kirsten would acknowledge. And it's more, let's talk about, what type of strategies we want to have, or let's talk about what you did last weekend, or, your kids are going to college. How was the transition? Whatever the things might be that are the more personal aspects that I think bind us together.
Well, this game used to take place in early summer. Kind of got derailed a little bit because of COVID, and I was actually surprised when the game was rescheduled this year in September. We're less than 2 months from an election day. I was surprised mostly because I didn't think you guys were going to have time to practice, because so many people are out campaigning, especially the House members, so often. But have you noticed this year that the mood has changed a little bit, or people's availability has decreased because campaign season is in full force right now? Senator Gillibrand.
I would just say what we were trying to do is create a cohesive team post the men's game, because we have 3 very good players who play with the men routinely, and we don't get their time because they're practicing every morning or most mornings with the men's team. So the strategy was just trying to get all our players to practice together, and it didn't work because we had several practices in July, which were terrific, before we broke in August. But the House and Senate schedule has been misaligned, and so September doesn't work. But it's going to be great for tonight because we don't have to play in the searing heat. It's going to be nice and cool, a perfect night to watch softball and to play softball. But we'll probably return to the June, July timeframe just because of availability. We didn't have a lot, certainly not we only had 1 practice yesterday, post August break. And we only had a few. Oh yes. And we only had, we certainly practiced straight through till we left for August, work periods in our states and in our districts. But we're just going to do our best. We love this game. We love the people we play with, both with our team and against, and we love the cause. And the number of young women who show up and have such an amazing evening, the number of my interns and staff that like to just make posters and have fun. It's just one of those rare times in Washington where everybody's on the same page and everybody has a good time.
Yeah, I do remember a time, I remember when Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who started this game, as you said at the top, Senator Gillibrand, because of her own experience with breast cancer, and she was head of the DNC at the time, and it was a very political and tumultuous time for her. It was, years ago, but this game still went on, and, Republicans and Democrats still played together on this game, and that was very political at the moment, for the players as well. But I get a lot of, during this game, when I tweet about it every year, I'm a player, and inevitably I get people responding to me on Twitter, many people saying, these members of Congress, they shouldn't be doing that. They need to be working and getting things done for the American people, but they don't do any work. They're out playing softball. Senator Capito, can you respond to that? It happens every year. And is this taking away from your work on Capitol Hill?
I mean, I kind of chuckled when you said that because I'm thinking, let's see, wait a minute, let me get this right. We practice from 7 to 8. We haven't practiced much at all. So there's not a whole lot of work that's going on at 7 to 8 in the morning. And we play one night a year. And we're raising money for an incredibly good cause that unites us. And so I think these are, there's so much people just want to pick and nitpick. We're people too. We have regular lives, we have loves and hates just like everybody else. And I think the opportunity to get to know the press better has really been fulfilling for me. Your coaches, that third grade coach, Frank, he's got to get out of there. And so, these are all about relationship building. It's no different than in anybody else's life that maybe they might have a company picnic or a bowling tournament or something like that raises money for the local Little League teams. And so, we're allowed to have fun too. We do have fun. And I think it's a good thing. And I think it's healthy for the organization. And for the pushback, I would say, you know what, you're getting a healthier Congress that works better together across the aisle because of occasions like this.
Yeah, Senator Gillibrand, can you point out to one thing perhaps that resulted either legislatively, directly or indirectly from this softball game, whether it's a relationship that you made with a member that you didn't know very well, or a piece of legislation that maybe came to fruition because of the softball game?
Well, I mentioned a bunch of bills that I've done with Shelley. Those bills all came about because I got to know more about Shelley. I got to know what her state's like, what families in West Virginia are going through, understanding a lot of the similarities between West Virginia and upstate New York. Same issues with getting clean water and getting PFAS out of the water, same issues with the opioid epidemic, the fact that substance use disorder is massive in upstate New York and in West Virginia, the mental health crises, the maternal mortality crisis as moms, something like we absolutely share. And so I found that with every member of the team, there were areas of common ground that we built because of the friendships we developed on the team. I look for issues I can work with Shelley. When I'm looking for a lead Republican supporter on a bill, Shelley's among the first few people I go to see and say, is this something you want to work on? Is this something you care about? Is this something that affects West Virginia? And so the benefit of this collaboration for raising awareness to help young women fight against breast cancer results in a lot of work across the aisle and bicameral work. So when I need a lead House member, I know right where to go. I can talk to Sherry Bustos. I can talk to Debbie. I can talk to a number of the amazing women who work on, who are on the softball team who are in the House. So it gives me understanding of who these House members are, which is great. It just allows me to do my job better.
And Senator Capito, you're from West Virginia, a very different state than New York. Have you been able to get a better understanding of, there's no Republican senator from New York that you can go to learn about a state. So, have you been able to understand the people, the politics a little bit better in New York? And is there some sort of cross collaboration on an issue that affects both states?
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the things, and Kirsten mentioned many of the things that we've worked on, but one of the things that is different, but then similar to our states, believe it or not, is the rural nature of upstate New York and the rural nature of my state of West Virginia. And one of the major problems that we have is lack of broadband. And so Kirsten and I have worked together on rural broadband issues because obviously highlighted a lot during the pandemic, but this was even pre-pandemic. That we joined together to try to deploy that broadband to those rural areas so that we don't have areas of the country left behind. And she mentioned, just recently in March, we traveled to Germany and Poland, and Kirsten has bases in her state. I don't have big bases in my state. I have National Guard, which serves in every venue of conflict that we might have. But to see the perspective that she has with, the 10th Mountain Company or something like that really helps me see through the eyes of of somebody who represents not just that member of the military, but their family and their support systems. And so, Kirsten and I don't serve on any of the same committees, so we can interact on those long trips flying over to Germany to be able to see each other's perspectives. And it's hugely helpful. And it all begins because we've known each other for these many years. She's the pitcher, she's the ace pitcher. I'm over on the third baseline hoping that every ball goes to her and not to me. and so, or she strikes everybody out. That's even better. But I do think that the confidence that we show in one another, whether it's in a personal way, really translates to things like broadband, like sexual assault in the military, like our military families, the PFAS issue that she mentions that hits our state hard and hers hard. So it's been very, very beneficial to me to be able to get to know her as a New Yorker who represents quite a different state.
And you mentioned the Codel, and which was focused on Ukraine. Senator Capito, I want to follow up on that a little bit. There's, the president has requested billions of dollars in aid for Ukraine. Is that still something that has bipartisan support that you think will pass Congress this year?
Absolutely. Support for Ukraine has broad-based bipartisan support. We traveled early. We were one of the first groups. We didn't go all the way into Ukraine, but we did go into Germany and Poland and got, as close as you could get at that point. But subsequently, many of our fellow senators have been into Ukraine, into Kyiv, and talked with the president there. And so there is broad-based support for weaponry, for us to help shore it up, especially now when we see advances, when we see Ukraine being able to push Russia out of certain occupied areas. I mean, this is really fulfilling, I think, for us to see because of the vast resources that we've put in and the passion that we see from the Ukrainians that we feel as well. There's always a few that won't support, and there's always a few that are not going to agree, but I don't think it's a partisan thing so much. It may be just a personal, but broad-based support for this is definitely how we're feeling about the Ukrainian efforts.
And, we're getting toward, as I mentioned, close to an election toward the end of the year. There's some hot button issues right now that might or might not be bipartisan. So, Senator Gillibrand, I wanted to ask you about one of those, and one of them is on same-sex marriage. Have you gotten an update on if there are 10 votes or Republican votes from the negotiators on if the same-sex marriage bill will get a vote next week in the Senate?
I think we will have a vote next week, and I also think it will be successful. LGBTQ equality is something a lot of people believe in, and most families in America have someone who's part of the LGBTQ community, and we all love our families. And I think the country has decided over the last decade that we believe people should marry the people they love. And so regardless of your religious views, this is an issue of civil law. So I think there's consensus, and so I'm hopeful that we can have a vote. People will vote their conscience and what they believe, but I do think there is enough support within the Senate to codify that promise that we've made to people over many years that we believe in families.
Mm-hmm. And Senator Capito, have you come out with a position yet on that?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen the actual what we're actually going to be voting on. I think that there is. I don't think that we're quite. It's quite there in the numbers to be 60 quite yet. I think there's broad discussions going on, and I think that Tammy Baldwin and Rob Portman, who are sort of leading the charge on both sides, have had a lot of conversations. There's questions of religious liberties and other things that seem to be open to be included in there, but we're not exactly sure what that is. So, I'll announce my position at the time when it becomes more permanent, but I'm not sure if Kirsten knows more about whether it would come up next week or after the election. There seems to be some debate on that point.
Yeah, it seems like timing might be a huge issue. We don't have a lot of time, so I want to ask you guys a quick round robin of questions, if you can keep your answers short. First, Senator Gillibrand, what is your walk-up song?
New York State of Mind.
Senator Capito, same question.
Same thing. Country Roads.
Country Roads.
Perfect.
Senator Gillibrand, who do you want to get out the most tonight? What member of the press?
Amy.
Amy of the Cook Political Report. Senator Capito.
I like to strike her out.
That would be
Senator
good. Leanne,
Leanne,
I want to get you out.
Oh, it might be, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I've really been preparing for this game tonight. Been lots of practices.
Well, that's good.
So I just have one final question, if you both can answer very briefly. It's actually a reader gave us this idea for a question, and it is, do you think in the new Congress there's going to be more opportunities for bipartisanship? Just in the last 30 seconds, Senator Capito, starting with you.
Well, hope springs eternal, and I am an optimist. So I think it's always yes. I think we're tired of the pushes and pulls, and I know the American people are.
And Senator Gillibrand.
So the untold story is how much bipartisanship we've actually already had in this Congress. I personally have had 4 of my legislative bills signed into law, all bipartisan, with all sorts of different leads, from Senator Marco Rubio on my veterans bill to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the bipartisan CHIPS bill, the work I've done with Shelley on the military sexual assault issue. That's all in the NDAA. So we've been getting a lot of good bipartisan work done. And so I am extremely optimistic that trend will continue. It's just not necessarily reported on. It's not the push and pull that drives clicks and drives front page articles. But the truth is, there's been a ton of bipartisanship in this Congress, and I'm really grateful for it. The gun bill, for example, investing in mental health is something that everyone agreed on. And so for both Shelley and I, violence disruption investment matters so that we can end the suicide rate, the overdose rate. A lot of huge problems in our states gets funded there. And I wrote the gun trafficking part of that bill to end gun trafficking, because most of the guns used in crimes in New York State come from out of state, and most of them are illegal. So we've had a bunch of successes. And so I'm going to keep working on a bipartisan basis with all my awesome softball colleagues and everyone else that I work with on the Republican side, and continue to get things done.
Great. We are out of time. We all have to get to the field, and I know you guys are wearing your jerseys. I am not, but go Press.
Ooh.
We're gonna go to the field very soon, so we'll see you there.
See you there. Thank you.
Senator Capito,
Good luck,
Senator
everybody.
Gillibrand.
Play well.
Thanks.
Good luck.
You too. Not too
Don't
well.
get hurt.
But play well. Yes, same.
Yeah, no
That's what we
injuries.
all wish for.
Right.
So thank you all for joining us for the latest edition of Across the Aisle. My name is Leanne Caldwell. Please go to WashingtonPostLive.com if you want to see this again, or to read the transcripts, or for all of our programming. Thanks so much for joining.